Good morning. The date is November 3, 2023, and it's a Friday, the beginning of a long weekend. The beginning of a double long weekend. We already had a long weekend from last week, but now we enter into another weekend. Thank you for being with us this morning. Welcome to your program agenda here on Cignal TV's One News, channels 8 and 250. I'm your host, Cito Beltran, thanking you for joining us. And for those who regularly watch the program, we thank you for your support. And we would like to express our gratitude to all of you who are Cignal TV subscribers. Your support is very much appreciated. We would like to also thank all our friends who watch us via Facebook and on YouTube. It takes some effort for them who are living abroad to catch up with us with the time zones, etc. But we do hope that we are able to give you snippets, insights, a window into what's happening or of what's interest or the agenda in the Philippines. So thank you to all of you, also those who watch Cignal Play app. And of course, maraming salamat, PLDT Home Fiber Optic Internet. All the way here in Lipa City, Batangas, or when we go to Baguio, when we go to other places in the country, when there's PLDT Home Fiber Optic Internet, we are on the air. And of course, thank you, Mr. Marco Borlongan. Let's now go to our plans for the day, our agenda for the day. We will be speaking to a member or someone from the academe, someone who has been observing Asian developments and particularly the issue between the Philippines and China regarding the West Philippine Sea. And let's find out, is it really about China in America? Are we just being played or used as a bait or whatever in the cat and mouse game? Or is this really a plan on the part of China, I was told, in the coming years? Anyway, we'll be learning about all of this later. But in the meantime, let's go first to our daily starter from author Robert Greene. Do not wait for a coronation. The greatest emperors crown themselves. That is from Mr. Robert Greene, and it is a good reminder for those of you who still wait to be recognized, for those of you who still wait to be acknowledged or to be called. Though you don't have to be acknowledged, called, or presented your status, crown yourself, recognize yourself, enable yourself, and honor yourself. Because in many societies, while Filipinos are appreciated, particularly our nurses and our healthcare workers, in many societies, some people will tell Filipinos, well, you're too nice, don't wait to be called, don't wait to be told, go out and get what you deserve. So there, what Robert Greene said, do not wait for a coronation. The greatest emperors crown themselves. Let's now go to the front page of the Philippine Star, and we do have a guest. We do have a special guest sa Pilipinas, in the Philippines. The headline is West Philippine Sea on Marcos agenda with visiting Japan Prime Minister. In the photo, the top left photo of the Philippine Star, Philippine and Japanese flags are installed on the center island of Batasan Road in Quezon City yesterday for the visit of Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who arrives in Manila today. and Congress or the Batasang Pambansa will convene for a special joint session at the Batasang Pambansa to welcome Kishida. And to the top of the front page, we have no overtime pay for teachers who worked in the barangay Sangguniang Kabataan elections. Apparently, there's now a call from the teachers group that those who had to work overtime should be paid for canvassing, etc. The problem is, according to the COMELEC, they cannot give overtime pay because they are only allowed by the DBM and COA to give overtime pay for their employees and not for those who have been deputized or called to service. So yun po, okay? And meanwhile, the Philippine National Police goes on heightened alert until November 6. Police units across the country are on heightened alert starting today until Monday in anticipation of the droves of people returning either to the provinces or Metro Manila after the long holiday break. Okay, medyo too late the hero during November 1, baka naman makabawi sa weekend because during November 1 here in Lipa City alone, traffic was tied up for hours because there were no people manning the intersections near the cemetery. So we received a lot of complaints, people spending hours for trips that normally only take 5 minutes. So there you go. Meanwhile, the center photo and news in the Philippine Star, photos of those who escaped from Gaza. People entered the Rafah border crossing in the southern Gaza Strip before entering Egypt on November 1. Scores of foreign passport holders trapped in Gaza started leaving the war-torn Palestinian territory when the Rafah crossing to Egypt was opened up for the first time since the October 7 Hamas attacks on Israel. Below that photo is a photo of two Filipino doctors. And you will be wondering, Filipino doctors? These are Filipino doctors Darwin de la Cruz and Regidor Esguerra, both members of Doctors Without Borders, who were among the first group of people to leave the besieged Gaza Strip. So they are working for that international organization, but they have been required to leave the area of conflict because things are just going to get worse. Okay. Then below that, we have DFA slams China for accusing the Philippines of panatag intrusion. The Department of Foreign Affairs slammed China yesterday for accusing the Philippines of intruding into Panatag Shoal, saying Manila has no obligation to seek the permission of Beijing when navigating in its own waters. Yan mga classic no? Trespassing na, ikaw pa yung tatawaging walang hiya. Okay, typical style or position of China. Anyway, photo to the bottom left, with the end of the Undas break, vendors have started unwrapping Santa Claus figurines, Christmas lights, and other holiday ornaments in various shopping areas, including this one at the Dapitan Arcade in Quezon City. So, if you're the type To celebrate Christmas, may I suggest that you get into the mood, get into the spirit, because I can tell you personally, we are not promised tomorrow. And given the number of people I know who are dealing with cancer, who are sick, I myself am still struggling with my issues. You need to at least take every opportunity to celebrate. And speaking of, we are not promised tomorrow. Philippines still among worst countries for journalists. For the 16th consecutive year, the Philippines has remained on the list of countries where killers of journalists go unpunished. The Philippines ranked 8 in the latest Global Impunity Index released by New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists. We have a slight improvement from 7 in the past 2 years. Nabawasan naman daw ng konti, pero yung pa rin. The Philippines is not a safe country for journalists. Meanwhile, to end the news, the reading of the front page, we have some nice news. Iloilo City named UNESCO Creative City of Gastronomy. Ulitin ko po, gastronomy, hindi astronomy. Iloilo City has earned the distinction of being the first city in the Philippines to be included in the list of creative cities for gastronomy, para sa pagkain po, for food, by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Okay, so yun, we have been, Iloilo got it, and I suppose that is going to make the Ilonggo dishes even more popular during Christmas. Okay, ewan ko. Ako, I don't know if it's Ilonggo or Iloilo in nature, but bachoy. Bachoy is one of the things I like. Some others like molo. Okay. Anyway, we'll go for a quick break. I'll catch my breath. And we will continue with our topic for today, all about our issues and brouhahas with China here on Agenda.
The Foreign Affairs Department stood its ground and declared China is intruding on our waters. Therefore, the Philippines doesn't need to seek approval from them when our vessels are navigating inside our territorial sea. This after China accused the Philippines of quote-unquote intruding when BRP Conrado Yap was in the waters near Bajo de Masinloc. The DFA insists China's accusations have no legal basis and only serve to raise tensions in the West Philippine Sea. They added that China has been blatantly violating international laws for continuously intimidating and harassing Filipino vessels. How should the Marcos administration proceed with the increasing tensions with China? Let's further discuss this on today's agenda.
Jaime Naval is an assistant professor at the UP Diliman Department of Political Science, a keen observer on ASEAN affairs and Chinese politics, among others. Naval has represented the Philippines on issues relating to regional security and strategic management. He obtained his master in public policy at the National University of Singapore, where he graduated as class valedictorian.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment. Class valedictorian in Singapore. Wow, congratulations on that one, Professor Jaime. Let's carry on with our topic for this morning, and please help me out. Okay, walang alam talaga dyan sa China na yan, and I guess many Filipinos tend to think that way, but recent developments have started to catch people's attention. Former Secretary Rafi Alunan has made claims that there could be sleeper cells in Metro Manila or in the Philippines. There are people who are saying we should really bring the case of who really owns the shoal to the international court, etc. What are your readings and views on this matter, Professor?
I don't claim to know everything like you do. We're in the same boat, except probably I spend more time considerably monitoring and observing these developments. The latest exchange between the Philippines and China, and it's quite unusual because the DFA now is speaking more loudly and more frequently, particularly after the other week or last week we have the Ayungin Shoal with the BRP Sierra Madre as a case in point, and we have a collision there with the vessels that were doing resupply mission to the Sierra Madre. Then there's now this issue about Bajo de Masinloc, and then I just found out right now about the issue on Panatag, and the altercation continues. Question is, how far does this situation go, and what is the trajectory? Not wanting to be a bringer of bad news, but someone who sees developments and monitor them as I should. Medyo this is alarming, no? Kasi the situation definitely is not in any way improving. However, it is obvious also that the measures being implemented by China are calculated. Problem is, what if there would be ground parties on the ground who would miscalculate and get out? For example, if the Chinese militia and their Coast Guard would misread or would overreact, as we are reacting to the harassment that we're receiving in our West Philippine Sea. So nakakabagabag yung developments na nagpapatuloy.
No, historically or based on what you know on the subject matter, is this part of a step-by-step process? Because dati, they would just essentially, anong tawag ba nun, yung crowd the area with
Farming.
their fish, with their fishing vessels, etc. And parang okay lang, sige, it's the sea, you go fish, we fish. And then they started harassing our fishermen, and now they started harassing the supply ships to going to Panatag and those research vessels. And now we have a collision. So parang every year, the level of engagement is becoming more combative and scaled up.
Yes, yes. I was trying to list down before the program some of the things of the cup we could identify. For example, the landmark year was 2012 when Scarborough was occupied or claimed physically by China, even as there was reputedly a bilateral agreement for both camps to withdraw, parang mag-calm down. But from our version of the story, we withdrew and the Chinese did not. Then started the land filling or reclamation, and then the base building. They converted those reef and shoals into military bases. May airport pa nga na could land their big aircraft. And then the swarming became a favorite strategy. You have a few months ago water cannon being used against us, then laser pointing, and they say it's only those kind of lasers you could buy on the sidewalk. And now we have collision. Apparently China would have a list of strategies or acts short of war, and they border on what they call the gray zone. But something is different now for us compared to, say, 2 years ago as the administration of Digong Duterte was winding down. I was being asked by a number of people, wala naman, the problem did not seem not to have existed during the administration of Duterte, and it's only now, particularly as the Philippines have agreed to the EDCA, and then you have the MDT now being cited as a possibility and the like. So the problem didn't exist before. Now it's existing because the Philippines is seeking the help of Uncle Sam. My response to that is like spouse abuse. You know, when a woman or a spouse usually would be abused by the husband or any offending party, the problem seems not to have existed because it's kept under wraps. The woman or the abused party would not want to report, ayaw niyang mahiya, or simply deferential, nag-submit to the situation. But now, with the new administration and perhaps given the more prudent advisors that the administration has, we now have a situation where the beatings, the harassment, the abuses are now being exposed to the public. I particularly admire the current track of the Coast Guard for every incident naka-document video. And they have people from media, civilians who are there to witness. So it's not something that we edit, we do fake news, or just simply allow a press statement. It's documented for the public to see. So these have been, apparently, these were kept under wraps during the previous administration, and we're seeing it now. The problem now that we have is, so what do you do with this barrage of unilateral activities being waged against us by China? You have essentially one direction to pursue or question to answer. How do you protect your rights? Of course, you protect your rights by asserting it, by doing affirmative action. And the resupply is not even affirmative action. It is an essential part of our presence, even before they started building their bases and improvements in their claimed shoals. So we are not doing anything new. In fact, we are merely asserting what is ours. But then there's a paradox, Cito. We are being asked, it is incumbent on us to promote our rights, but it's also incumbent on us to promote the peace. But like a battered wife, would you want to keep quiet in order to promote the peace? I don't think that's appropriate. While you do not want to make a scandal or unnecessary accusations on the supposedly abusive party, the victim cannot just be promoting the peace. The victim would have to promote his or her own rights.
Mhm. Okay, now is this there are just so many facets to this issue. Now we're being more vocal. The Marcos administration is making protests left and right. As you pointed out, even the Coast Guard is documenting everything with civilian witnesses. But is this something that we did not do under the Duterte administration as a state policy? Or is this something we are now doing as part of our mutual defense or bilateral arrangements with the United States? Because there are people saying na, be careful, baka ma-Ukraine kayo dyan, the US is saying, good for you, you should assert your rights, etc. But in the end, when push comes to shove, baka biglang wala tayong kuya.
Uh, in retrospect, we are now being able to connect the dots. We know that there was a shift in foreign policy during the administration of Digong Duterte.
Mhm.
This is my opinion, and I
Yeah.
think others would share this view with me. These were not reported. This is not the first time, apparently, that China has been roaming around our backyard. This is not the first time that China is doing all this swarming. But we hardly heard them, if at all. They were news about them and documentation on them were subdued. And precisely because we were seeking China's economic assistance and other development help, plus we forged such a strong political agreement to as friends to side with China or at least to defer with China. But so I call it, to my own analysis, there was a policy of ambivalence. Why is it ambivalence when definitely there was a shift politically with China? Well, it's ambivalence because we remember even Digong Duterte, when he would be prompted by the domestic constituents, by people asking him, so what are we doing with the South China Sea? He even had this speech in the United Nations where he asserted that the arbitral award shows that the West Philippine Sea belongs to the Philippines. So it's ambivalence because he would say something appeasing China, projecting that we mean no ill, but at the same time, under pressure by domestic politics, he would say, no, we would not give any of our territory, we will continue to assert. But then at the same time, he says the arbitral award, which he was invoking, is just a piece of paper. So it's a policy of ambivalence. But what that is as far as it was practiced. Now comes the administration of BBM, and the ambivalence has dissipated. We are clearer, we are louder, and even more definitive. No, not 1 inch or not even a square centimeter. We would not allow this practice to continue on. And that's where the trouble now comes, because now we have exposed what was previously hidden from us.
Okay. I know you are a political scientist and not an economist, but could you be able to at least say if we benefited or we did not get anything out of the political ambivalence or the policy of ambivalence of the Duterte administration in the hopes of getting economic support, political support, etc. Because now we are pulling out of several loan applications with China. There are several projects that remain unstarted or undone. What is your reading? Nakinabang ba tayo or we ended up with empty promises and false expectations?
To be fair with China, and as with any other country who's expressed willingness to extend assistance either through trade or through ODA. Not all the cases were pulling out, or we did not, the projects did not push. So it's China's faults. Uh, we do due diligence when we even tap development assistance. In the case of China, I've gone through studies where the interest rate or concessional loans were even more attractive, usually from the Japanese. But and some are even wondering, bakit mataas yung interest rate tapos we're biting supposedly the bullet from China dahil available lang. So that's one. There's politics taking over the economics of things. The cost-benefit analysis would have said otherwise, but then the politics gets into the way. There are also instances naman na simply we did not do our homework, and then naghahapon mga requirements, feasibility studies, we were not able to do that. Now, nag-abot na. To the credit of China, there have been a number of projects, not necessarily super big ticket items. For example, bridges, friendship bridges that were constructed here and in other parts of the country. That is something we would appreciate. But in the net,
yeah, you have to forgive me kung natatawa ako nung sinabi mong friendship bridges, because one of them was built between BGC and Barrio Capitolio and has now become our curse in our village.
Okay.
But anyway, here's the thing, Prof. Jaime. I think I've always said one of the best tools for analysis is comparison. Now, the Philippines is in this situation. You being an keen observer of Asian developments, how is Vietnam handling things? How does Indonesia handle their China issue? And ewan ko, hindi ko na maala, Malaysia, kasali ba dyan?
And even Malaysia.
Yeah, I've heard of cases where Vietnam has shut down or sunk some fishing vessels entering their territory. And you don't hear much, political noise from that side of the ocean, but we have so much here in the Philippines. How are they handling it, and are they handling it better?
Vietnam definitely is handling it better. Two things. One, the case of Vietnam, even Indonesia and Malaysia, Indonesia is not a claimant directly to the South China Sea, but it is its waters overlap with the South China Sea being claimed by China. So there will be times that the intrusions do occur. And Indonesia is more gung-ho, no? Pag nahuli nila yung intruding boats, they would pasasabugin nila or susunugin in public. So to send home the message, look, don't mess with us. And we've not seen this such dramatic expressions of assertiveness being negatively or grossly where there's gross retaliation from China. No? Their economics and their politics, international trade, international cooperation continue. In the case of Vietnam, they have a much credible naval or naval armada. They do protect their vessels. They have been subjected to the same kind of swarming, water cannons, and the like. But they've been able to present a credible defense vis-a-vis the Chinese. But this is the other important thing. When people are saying, look, the Philippines is economically tied up to China, about 1/3 of its economic interactions are with the Chinese, I agree with that. And so does Vietnam, and so does Indonesia, and even Malaysia. But how come, even as they assert themselves and project and protect their rights, they continue on with the relationship? So it's not really something that if you would contradict China in the South China Sea, that everything goes down the drain. No, China is a rational actor. there is reason for all this interaction. No country can on its own trade or have possession of the cards, so to speak, in a bargaining table. Because while they have their own cards and they have their own advantages, the other countries would still have their own. So it's not in China's interest that a war or violence would erupt in the South China Sea vis-a-vis the Philippines. But nonetheless, we have to equip ourselves that we are able to somehow, we cannot have a credible defense capability overnight. It's like a product of many years of trying to build up, not really to go to war, but if war is necessitated, we may have to defend ourselves. Even right now, di nga gera yung pinaghahandaan natin. We don't have enough vessels to patrol what we claim or what we believe to be ours in the process. So, responding or in summing up, one, yung ibang claimants, the other claimants, and even actors whose interests are overlapping with China, they defend their rights quite credibly and assertively. Why can't we not do that? Second, on the issue na if we would go to war or we would contradict China, our economy suffers. How come their economies do not suffer? And China is still lending even to Indonesia and even Malaysia. Why can't we not have that economic relations active, even as we have to iron out the security or the maritorial dispute on the other hand?
Okay, so we'll go for a quick break, Prof. Jaime. And when we return, I'd like to continue this conversation because at least I think people are going to learn so much that there's nothing to be worried about if we defend our territory. But let's go for a quick break. When we return, let's carry on with the conversation. We'll be right back here on Agenda.
Former DILG Secretary Rafi Alunan has spoken up about alarming signs that have emerged regarding China's actions and intentions versus the Philippines. In a recent column, Alunan shared a report of a house raid in Pasig City, which led to the arrest of 6 Chinese nationals and the discovery of high-powered firearms marked with "From People's Republic of China." This revelation for Alunan underscores China's infiltration in the country, facilitated by corrupt officials. He added that the discovery showed China's, quote, "malevolent intention," as he suspects that the foreigners belong to the so-called sleeper cells. According to Alunan, this issue is directly related to China's assertive claims in the West Philippine Sea, as it aims to dominate and control the region. He said that it is imperative to address these threats with proper national and civil defense readiness, preparing for hybrid warfare and potential attacks. Overall, Alunan said this situation demands attention and action, as it is not a matter of if, but when these threats could materialize. Let's dive deeper into it on today's agenda.
Okay, let's go back to our conversation with Professor Jaime and Professor Jaime Naval. Professor Jaime, would you care to respond to that? Because, personally, that video clip reminds me of the story I learned when I was much younger in Baguio, where a property owner who had a really nice house, beautiful garden that was tended by this Japanese gardener, woke up one morning to find out that this Japanese gardener was a colonel in the Imperial Japanese Army that had now come to Baguio City. This was, of course, World War II, okay? But do you give credence to this repeat of history of sleeper cells in the Philippines? Because may mga nag-uusap-usap na rin who are talking about sympathizers, Filipino-Chinese sympathizers who are openly clashing with opinions with authorities and media. What's your response to all of this?
In international discourse, it is but normal and not necessarily always above ground that information and influence would be secured or peddled. I personally do not see right away the connection of Pogos to sleeper cells. But I'm not discounting it right away, the opinion of former Secretary Rafi Alunan. May comments lang ako. For example, maybe it's a question, and I'd like the public also to consider that. Apparently, when it comes to China, a number of the things that were committed or that the previous administration had allowed the Chinese to have, for example, with us, yung Pogos, was it really contributing to the economy in the way that it was planned? Was there really a study in the first place? Or is it simply political accommodation because of the shift in the policy that the leadership made? Apparently, right now, we're seeing all the negative, and it's so gross. So that's one. We've had also problems with immigration. The Chinese, even undesirable ones, would have been able to enter the Philippines simply because we had such a very good diplomatic and political accommodation with them. Drug trafficking, which was the battle cry of the previous administration, has it really been stemmed, or we were just able to identify and have those small fry even murdered or killed on the street? But we've not been able to identify the real roots, the sources of the drugs. And even up to now, may link na nakikita tayo na yung drug trafficking, tsaka yung even Pogo, may mga involvement din sa crime, kidnapping and the like. So there are things that we have to ask if we would do policy review on how effective this were. On the national security side, we knew that the Chinese even tried to have their presence in Subic, in our northernmost islands of Puga and Babuyan Island, and even in Cagayan. Kaya nagreklamo in particular yung ating governor sa Cagayan kasi hindi niya ma-accommodate as much as possible the promised investments and exposures of the Chinese. But I'm not concerned only about the sleeper cells. We knew that almost Malampaya which supplies our natural gas, was almost taken over by a Chinese connected or somebody who had connections, especially with the Chinese. I am not trying to demonize the Chinese. What I'm saying is we have to have some sort of an auditing at the national security level. Saan ba ang exposure ng mga katunggali? It happens that we have enemies, and some enemies can also be friends. There's a term that they use of frenemies, friends who are enemies. We know that you could be a friend on the economic part, but you cannot be a friend on the other segment like security. I think it's high time for government, and especially the National Security Council and the task force on the West Philippine Sea, to have this sort of audit. Why? Kasi how exposed or dependent or taken over are we by, for example, sa digital connection? I forgot.
The telcos that well, there was an attempt by a telco group to put up cell sites inside military camps.
Yes, but not only that, we were able to frustrate that. But for example, I forgot, it's not Napocor, the one that supplies
NCGP, National Grid Corporation.
And if I recall correctly, the Chinese have a decisive, substantial exposure there. These are vital infrastructures and utility services that we have. And if it falls in the wrong hands, we need the money, but we don't need something. You give me the money that my neck would have a rope I'm tied with. There must be some sort of auditing right now, especially that the policies and measures implemented by the previous administration. We're seeing a lot of domino effects na bakit parang with relation to the Chinese, there have been a number of parang nabukulan tayo.
And
we have to distinguish the good ones from the bad eggs in the process.
Yeah, and your suggestion is very valid because it is something that is now being done state to state by, well, state legislators, governors, etc. I know of one or two. I won't generalize, but I've read this time and again over the past few years where U.S. officials or state officials would issue a law banning the ownership of property, especially agricultural property, from Chinese companies. And in Australia, if I recall, they already have an issue regarding the presence and property holdings of Chinese companies after China and Australia had political arguments regarding West Philippine Sea, human rights, etc. So your suggestion of auditing our frenemies, the exposure of key facilities, national security concerns is very valid. What else should we be doing, Professor Jaime?
I remember, Cito, a couple of months before, it was brought up by media regarding reclamation of the Manila Bay. And the U.S. Embassy, one of the staff involved, was complaining that in fact, mas alam pa nila yung national security implication ng pagre-reclaim because it is a Chinese company that itself was involved in the reclamation and landfilling of the reefs and shoals in the South China Sea that China claimed and has made into ports and bases in the process. So why are we, when we deal with these kinds of issues, it should not be only because of profit or cost-benefit analysis in the material sense. We have to deal with it in a larger sense. So what's the implication on our national security? What if this company becomes the one who would be in charge of reclaiming? The Chinese does not have to eavesdrop or spy on us at all because we have welcomed them with arms open. Okay, you can do whatever you want so long as it's profitable and there would be a positive net effect materially. Okay. But we've seen it already through the POGOs and even the continuing flow of drugs, and mostly we would have Chinese who would be the distributors or who would be recipients of the imported illegal drugs. that this do happen. Again, I'm very concerned on this. I happen to be a member of an association that deals with China on Philippine China studies, but we don't want to demonize the Chinese, but we have to really glean, we have to evaluate so that we would have a proper perspective on how to manage things. We don't want to be ending up having the shorter side of the
Mhm.
bargain, so to
Okay.
speak.
Prof. Jaime, we'll go for our last break, a quick break. And when we return, let's continue with this very insightful conversation. And I just came up with the slogan, wala nang ex-deal, bayad na kayo. Okay, we'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Welcome back to the program Agenda with our professor, lecturer, assistant professor Jaime Naval, Department of Political Science, University of the Philippines. Prof. Jaime, okay, you've raised so many good points. Auditing our frenemies and then securing key installations, sensitive public utilities, etc. Now, when you were talking about reclamation, I was reminded that pre-COVID, the in thing back then was dredging, hindi pa reclamation. Dredging only for us to discover that all of the dredged material, pati yung mga pagkuha sa mga bundok, was being hauled to build Chinese naval station in the West Philippine Sea. So, what is your prediction, if you would? You're not in the business of making predictions, but the way things are going, should we simply tell the Americans, hey, you want freedom of navigation? You want to keep these lanes open? Eh di kayo magpulis, bakit kami lagi ang nababatukan o nabubukulan?
While I do understand and I agree with much of the Philippine position being implemented right now, for example, we're not invoking yet, but we are citing that that the mutual defense treaty is an option available to us. And then we recall as well that there's this part of the Chinese campaign, disinformation and misinformation campaign, is to reduce the narrative as it's just between us, two warring elephants, and why would you involve yourself being the grass that we would trample upon? I disagree that the narrative is about the clash of two powers who happens to be in our neighborhood, in our backyard. Because I do believe that even grasses or small fries like the Philippines, in the eyes of China or even the United States, we have incipient rights. And this we have proven as we were given much of the affirmative award in the arbitral ruling. Hindi issue dito ang Amerika. In fact, ang issue dito, tama ba may legal ba, may kabuluhan ba at sang-ayon ba ang batas particularly yung clause sa ginagawa ng mga nag-aangkin. And in fact, much of the things that we're doing right now, we're trying to harmonize our legal basis for the West Philippine Sea by harmonizing it with the provisions of the UNCLOS. So we're being consistent and above ground and ascendant. Now, as to the MDT, what I do believe that it's important for us to tap this alliance as a source of a credible posturing vis-a-vis parties that would have inimical interests, particularly affecting us. However, I think the term would be not only to cite the MDT, but among others and side by side, we have to tap and bring into our support, and they have expressed it many times in different occasions, the assistance, the political will of other countries, because it's not just the US that we should tap. I am, for one, I do not want that we put our strategy only dependent, putting all eggs in one basket. So, for example,
but at the moment, Professor Jaime, so many countries have shown support for the Philippines. So many countries are at odds with China regarding their 9 or 10 dash line, etc. But sorry, medyo maubusan tayo ng oras, bro. At the end of the day, where do you see all of this going to?
I think it makes sense. I said there's a paradox at the start of the program, that the paradox is we have to protect our rights. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is you have to promote the peace. When you promote your rights, there might be elbows you would rub against with, like China. But then at the same time, how do you promote peace? And that's quite a delicate balance. You have to do both. For the protection of our rights, we have to tap not only the United States, but even other like-minded countries.
Yeah.
But for the promotion of peace, we have to calibrate our steps, that we do not overreact. At the same time, we gain the moral ascendancy. And at the same time, it's not that we're stoking fire, but we are protecting our rights, but within a gambit na hindi naman natin unduly pinoprovoke yung ibang party.
When do we pull the trigger? When a Filipino dies? When a Filipino ship, civilian or military, is rammed forcefully?
Those are very difficult but very real scenarios, and I think we would have to. Those are defining parts of the red line.
All right.
Those are defining lines of the red line.
Okay, well, Professor Jaime Naval, thank you very much for your time with us. I myself, I learned a number of things from you, and pasensya ka na, baka magamit ko sa column ko one of these days. But thank you, and God bless you, and thank you for praying for me during the break. I do hope you have a great weekend. God bless you and your family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, that's Professor Jaime Naval, Assistant Professor Jaime Naval, Department of Political Science, University of the Philippines. Let's go to our final closing declaration for this week, and it comes from Francis Bacon. A wise man will make more opportunities than he finds. I've repeated this during the week. Let me just emphasize that in the Bible, it also says you should have 6 to 7 income streams or ways of making money, profit, or the like, because you never know how your fortune or the tides of fortune go. So there is nothing wrong in going out there and finding opportunities, even better, creating opportunities. Thank you for being patient with yours truly this week. Mahirap po talaga ang matandang hikain. God bless all of you, and please include Team Agenda in your prayers and keep it here on One News.